evening. We have a slide to ask you to close your eyes. It's coming up soon, so please close your eyes. You can open your eyes now. I hope none of you fell asleep. I know it's a hard time for this conference. My name is Daniel Aristizabal. I work for the Amazon Conservation Team. Me and my colleagues will have the last hour with you, so bear with us to a quick trip to the Amazon. Just now, you heard all these rich noises that denounce the huge diversity and biocultural richness of the Amazon. The first part of this lecture will be me talking about something very different. Believe it or not, there are groups of humans in this planet who these symbols here in the pictures have absolutely no meaning whatsoever to them. They probably have never seen these things, these icons, these cultural references are unknown to them. These symbols that we feel that are completely universal are not in fact. These people live deep in the forest. This is what the forest looks like through satellite. And this is what our office looks like through the plane, through a seat in the plane, in a small plane where we work. This is where the Amazon Conservation Team works. We've heard a lot about the Amazon being the lungs of the planet. But when you look below these trees that capture carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, you can also find this. This is the river system in the Amazon where we work at. This is the Caquetá Yapura River, the Cahuina rivers in Colombia. But you can see the vast array of rivers that flow underneath the canopy. And the job of these rivers is to move nutrients from the Amazon into the ocean, into the fisheries, into all the different ecosystems around South America. Therefore, we believe what the indigenous people have been telling us for thousands of years, that the Amazon is actually the heart of the planet because it pushes nutrients like our heart and our blood system. In this forest, the people that have absolutely no reference to footballs or soccer balls, if we were in the United States, are the people living in isolation. Indigenous groups that have absolutely no contact with the outside world. These are indigenous people who have decided to renounce everything that society offers to us. Soccer, cell phones, cars, etc. For those of you who have some experience in tropical forests, you know that these homes here are very, very dangerous because they are right beside really tall trees. And in the forest soils of the Amazon are very poor. Therefore, and there's a lot of storms, particularly now with climate change. So these trees are on the risk of falling, but they rather make that decision to live under this risk than being contacted by the outside world. So these are people who reject all contact, even contact with their own indigenous folks, their brothers and their sisters. These are groups, usually clans, families, small groups that decided to flee, particularly when disease came with the slave trade coming in from Portugal and Spain at the time, right? So these are groups that have been living in the forest for hundreds, some of them decades, because isolation has been a survival strategy that has passed through generations. These are some pictures from Peru. These are also some pictures from Peru. And in all of these pictures, you can see there's a diversity of homes, different ways of living and different ways of being in isolation. There wasn't a big, ginormous conference like this one where they all decided to isolate. Everyone, in different times of their life, decided to adopt this strategy of resistance to colonialism, resistance to capitalism. These are the only people in the whole planet that wouldn't be interested in being in this conference. They can survive on their own, and all they need is their lands and their forests to be intact. These are further pictures from Peru. For those of you who are familiar with tropical plants, these are papaya trees and banana trees. These are pictures from Colombia. We took these in 2013 Since we took them, don't worry, we've never flown again. We took these pictures to prove to the government that they exist, that these are not myths of the forest, but that they actually exist and have the rights. We believe that they are exercising their maximum right to self-determination. It's not the right to isolate, it's the right to live their life as they want to. And that includes not participating in this society. Here you have peach palm, which is also a tree that only, if you're ever lost in the forest and you see a peach palm tree, one of these, then you know there's humans around. Maybe people in isolation, maybe other indigenous communities. This is the same picture, and this is particularly interesting because it also shows us that they want to be in isolation. These peach palm trees are full of thorns, and they fall all the time. But look at that. You know, when you're in a plane, all of you have flown in planes. This example is a bit trickier when I talk to indigenous people in the Amazon. But when you're in a plane trying to see this, if you're in an angle like over here, you won't see it because they're completely covered by these 20-meter palm trees. If you're right on top of the coordinate, the GPS coordinate, you won't see it either. You know, when you're flying on a plane and you try to look down and you can't see what's right below you. So this means how much they're hiding. And this, we love this picture because it's the only picture that we have of Colombia where we actually see people coming out and looking at the plane. So again, this is pictures from the Yanomami, from the border between Brazil and Venezuela. And the interesting thing here is the different ways of being in isolation. Here they have huge crop gardens. What does this tell us? There's probably less threats. They're probably more comfortable because they're not being searched for, they're not being hunted down, they're not being enslaved, they're not being murdered. And this is particularly interesting too, because this is the only group in all of South America that lives in isolation outside the Amazon. This is the dry forest of El Chaco between Paraguay and Bolivia. This picture, the man here, his name is Didier Tacore. He grew up in isolation. This is the home where he grew up, and you can see the tracks at the bottom, the tracks of the trail tracks, because this land was degraded for cattle ranching in the border between Paraguay and Bolivia. So the Amazon Conservation Team, we are the secretariat of an alliance of 21 organizations, indigenous and civil society organizations that work for the defense of these people. We managed to establish confidentiality agreements, and we managed to gather data all across the continent to show the world that people living in isolation are not in a remote place or a myth, but that they're ever present in the forests of South America, and they're an integral part of what is to be in the Amazon and the biocultural richness of the Amazon. The orange dots in this map are groups that officially are confirmed by governments and exist in law. The yellow dots is our homework. It's the research that we need to confirm the groups that we think exist. And we think they exist because our indigenous colleagues tell us that they exist. There's 60 groups that are confirmed, and there's 123 groups yet to be confirmed by the government. This means that we could be, if we protect the lands of the people that exist, we could be talking about somewhere between 30 and 50 million hectares of forest that need to be protected to respect the rights of those who have, we owe it to them. They have been resisting colonization for 500 years, and they are basically the climate solution that's going to save us all. I'm going to go really quickly. Here, this is basically what indigenous people have been telling us for years. We have been, through our actions, isolating ourselves from civilization, or isolating by civilization, and these people have decided to isolate from civilization. And this is why indigenous people don't refer to isolated peoples as uncontacted, because they actually had contact and they decided to isolate, but they refer to them as people in a natural state. Or as the Brazilians call them parientes desconfiados, no? Vocês falam português. Parientes desconfiados. So I don't know how I would translate that. People who don't trust us, our brothers who don't trust us. So isolation had two big booms. One during the slave trade and the conquest of the Spanish and the Portuguese, and a second big boom in isolation was during the rubber trade in the 1800s and then in the world wars, when the big demand for rubber in Europe created slavery. And those booms of the Amazon, now it's the gold boom, the gold rush. These are the threats now, these are the problems we are facing. We call these dredges, mining dredges that erode the riverbeds looking for gold, but particularly polluting the riverbeds with mercury, the river and the soil and the air. These are dredges, but they quickly, in a lapse of 6 years, turned into these. Now we call these dragons. So the ones before we used to call dragas, and these we call dragones, or dragons. These are pictures from overflights we do to denounce this situation to governmental authorities. This is the border between between Colombia and Brazil. Here you can count the dredges in the forest, again, and look at the erosion. These beaches that to some look very attractive are actually full of polluted mercury. This is what deforestation looks like in the Amazon the difference between 2001 and 2023. You could see how isolated groups are always trying to find those patches of pristine forest. So it's no coincidence that the most preserved and integral forest that we have are those that overlap with indigenous people in isolation. And this is illegal mining in the rainforest at the time. So what do we do about it? We listen to indigenous people, we partner with their authorities, we go to their malocas, and this is a word you all need to know because our colleagues will come and talk about malocas, which are the big communal homes where the family lives and when all the decisions are making. So we go into the malocas and together with the indigenous people, but particularly with their leaders, with their shamans, with their spiritual leaders who are here consuming the coca plant, connect to the spirit world, and this Sunday decided that in order to protect isolated peoples, you need to protect all the territory. The traditional aspect, the spiritual realm, the owners of the plants. We heard this morning how plants have feelings and intuition and intelligence, but they also have a spiritual connection to their owners or the spirit world. And these people are the people that transit between both worlds. And they told us that in order to protect isolated peoples, it's very easy. They said, no molestar, don't bother, just protect the land and everything else will be protected. So we established negotiations with government authorities, with police authorities, with the military, with other NGOs. In this picture, you have the National Park Service, the two men in blue over there, discussing with the elders how to establish no-go zones, intangible zones, zones that are off limits for any production, and they're just left alone for the isolated peoples. And this is all validated through ritual. This is what's called the baile del muñeco, which is a ritual where you ask permission to the spirit world to do these and make these decisions. So once you have that decision to establish a no-go zone, then you need to know where they are. I love this picture here because if you look really into the picture, you will see that's a pool table. This is all the shamans of the community who turned the local bar into their office for a week, and they all started to share the stories that their elders told them of the clans that disappeared into the forest, that went hiding, the groups that are no longer there, and that's how we established maps to pinpoint where the people are in isolation. Then we could, before we used to do overflights, now we could use technology. We have a partnership with Maxar, the satellite company, which is the company that provides images to Google Earth. And here you could see in satellite, you can find the people in isolation, the fruiting palms that we saw in the pictures before, the recently cleared garden. Once we've done that, we build control posts with communities and establish strategic places to patrol their lands. These are some of the pictures of the control posts we've constructed together with indigenous people. In some cases operated by national parks. In some cases operated by the indigenous community and national parks together. In some cases, the leader of the control post is a shaman. In some, it really depends on the territory. We partner together with the shamans on the left, women, youth, to train them in GPS and patrolling methodologies. These are some of the guys patrolling the limits of the isolated people's territory. In some communities, they decide that the patrols are going to be led by women. I love this picture because you have the grandmother, her son, and her granddaughter all patrolling their territory. The grandmother is no longer with us. And this is the woman bringing back and sharing with their community what they saw in their patrols. And for them, the holistic integrity, the connectedness of everything is very important. So this is her not only sharing the threats that she saw during her patrols, but the abundance of biodiversity. And this is how she chose to present to her community what she saw during her patrols. We also work with the children to produce educational material. And very important, the main reason why people went into isolation is because they were completely decimated by disease. Common cold, common flu that we all face, destroyed the populations of South America. So therefore, we prepare communities in case of contact by training, using both traditional medicine and Western medicine, but this also helps the community better their health standards. So we have training. This is quite shocking, but we hired a professional makeup artist, so they're not real wounds, so that they could be trained on how to treat wounds. And the cool thing about these things is you could actually take them off like a sticker and take them to the communities and share with the other people how to treat these wounds. We built health posts, control posts, and this is all very nice, but you need policy. because this is just the effects of local communities. So here, together with the communities, we help them go to the government, and together we drafted, it took us 5 years, a national policy to recognize the protection and the existence of these people in the country. This is the community putting back a puzzle piece of what the policy looked like, the functions, etc., that they have. This is us in the communities preparing the meetings with the government. And this is our quick review of our achievements so far. So we've identified 15 isolated indigenous groups in Colombia, established strict protection zones for over 5 million acres. We usually do this for a North American audience, sorry. You could divide by 2 and you get roughly hectares. Identified 900 plus illegal mining barges, 1 national public policy, and 1.5 million acres of indigenous reserves creation or expansion in the Amazon, and identified, destroyed over 90 illegal line dredges or dragons in the forest. Thank you very much.
Kabung bebuts mamat monhub sawayena Huabiam kabung besoy kenguaman luaren Kabung bebuts mamat monhub sawayena Huabiam kabung behuam kenguaman benache
This is Paola Chindoy from the Sibundoy Valley. Thank you, Paola. Please have a seat. And she'll be our first panelist. And this is the map where Paola's from, right in the headwaters of the Amazon, where the Andes meet the Amazon. Perhaps the most important part of the Amazon, because that's where all the nutrients from the Andes come down into the flatlands and then into the ocean. Allow me to read Paola's bio. So Paola is a young Kamsha environmental leader and professional administrator. She has dedicated her life to strengthening indigenous women's organizations and ancestral medicinal knowledge holders. She serves as the president of the Association of Indigenous Women La Chagra de la Vida, ASOMI, in Putumayo, Colombia, a space for economic, environmental, and organizational sustainability composed of women from 5 indigenous groups: the Siona, the Cofán, the Inga, the Kamsha, and the Coreguaje. She leads training and intergenerational knowledge transmission processes in the defense of the territory, climate action, and participation of young indigenous women. Her work focuses on preserving ancestral knowledge, protecting the Amazon, and ensuring access to land for indigenous women. So please give a round of applause to Paola once again. Now I have the pleasure to introduce a dear friend and one of my teachers, Darío Silva, please. I wrote to Darío Silva Cubeo, who I greatly cherish. I wrote to him before this lecture because he was traveling in the Amazon, and I said, send me your bio. And then he sent me a text via WhatsApp, and when I read it, I said I should read it directly as he sent it to me because it makes more justice to his life. So here goes. It says, I am Darío Silva Cubeo from the Cubeo indigenous people. I was born in the department of Amazonas in the Miriti River, the territory known as the Jaguars of Yurupari, who we share with the Yukuna, Tanimuka, Letuama, and Matapi. In my youth, my parents founded the indigenous community of Curare, named after the venom we use for hunting. From 2002 to 2012, I was selected as the leader of 10 indigenous communities of my territory. During my term, we created a formal space to dialogue with the local Amazon Department authorities to discuss all related policies and programs in our land that has been active for the last 23 years. I participated in the creation of a national policy for the protection of people in isolation in Colombia, and likewise, I took part in structuring of a decree that grants Amazonian peoples the same status as an official territorial authority in the country. In 2018, due to threats to my family and my life, we settled in the capital of Colombia, in the capital of the Colombian Amazon, Leticia. And since then, I have served as an official delegate of the indigenous people of the Amazon to negotiate policies with the national government of Colombia. And then he sent this, oops, I almost forgot my family. My wife, Sofia, from the Miraña people, who we have been together for the last 31 years. We are the parents of 7, 4 sons and 3 daughters. That's who I am. So we'll start with Darío, and I'm going to, please excuse us, we're going to switch to Spanish so that they can understand better the conversation. For those of you who have translating devices, carcinogenic plant, okay? So now we'll switch to Spanish. Dari.
We are sorry, but we are not getting the sound. As soon as we have sound, we will continue to interpret.
Narraciones, en historias de origen. En esas narraciones nos cuentan la importancia que tiene que ver con el conocimiento que está en.
So in the histories that we get from our ancestors, we get knowledge regarding everything that has to do with nature, the river, lagoons, mountains, biodiversity, and everything is connected. So this is a system that is full of life, and things relate. So for us, we do not have beings without life. Everything in the world has a life of its own and has a mission to accomplish. It has a role to balance life. That is part of our history. So, you know, the first speaker this morning spoke about life. Everything moves, everything has life. It is connected with this. But we go beyond. That is the issue of spirituality, something that you do not see, but that you can feel. And that is part of the relationship that we have in the world of connectivity. Where exactly do we have this in the it is in the territory. We are indigenous. We have a territory. We have a mandate, a law of origin. Every single people in the world have a law of origin that was given to us by the Creator. That is the law of origin. And that is what guides us, and it connects us in Colombia, in the Amazon of Colombia. It's the indigenous system. Everything is connected, and the elders, the spiritual guides, are the ones that transmit to us this knowledge generation after generation. This is something that you don't really learn anywhere. You learn this in the mountains, in the river, while you are fishing. In nature, that's where we graduate. Women, the elder women, are those that transmit knowledge in the forest. Also, to complete the system of life, we have sacred elements, we have sacred plants that the creators have handed to each original people. In the case of other natives, such as Putumayo, they've delivered certain things to us. You know, they handed us sacred plants. Good, that is responsible for the painting I have on my cheek, on my chin rather. This is a sacred plant, and this was given by the gods so that we can interconnect with them. It's a world that is difficult to understand, but this is how we live, to actually be able to manage or balance what we know as a system in the world. And I would like to conclude that, we have a mission. We have a mission here in this world, and therefore we have a system of knowledge that helps us to maintain life in the world. If things are different, or if we don't follow this, we will disappear. We will disappear from the world. Now, thank you very much, Dario. The two most important things, coca and tobacco. Yahem, mambe, is not coca. The sacred plant of coca is mambe, but I couldn't bring it with me because mambe is used by different peoples in Sierra de Santa Marta, in this location, and it is roasted, and we produce a powder that we sniff and others smoke. These are sacred plants that are managed in a special manner, and these were handed out to us by the creators. We also have warapo, that helps to interconnect at another level. And we do not have, that's like starch. And those that know these things are in a sort of an upper level of the world. under this world, under the ground, we have rivers, we have people, and this is seen as if it was a religion, but it is not so. This is what we believe in. Thank you, Daddy, you. And to speak about this connection with plants, I would like to give the floor to Paula. She is the daughter of somebody that is very familiar with plants. How do Kamcha live? And which is their vision regarding plants and nature, plants such as yahe or ayahuasca in this spiritual connection? Thank you very much. Thank you for your question. Well, I would like to thank for the invitation that was addressed to me to come here and listen to you, learning, and also to share with you the dynamics that we have in our territory, how to relate your company objectives with how to relate your company objectives with the other another living being, which is Mother Earth. With regards to the terms that we use, we do not speak about the environment because we are not dealing with half of the planet. For us, spiritual knowledge and the relationship with plants, there are no frontiers, no limits. This is a part of a division, and that we are educated in such a manner that we consider us and others. We speak about the whole. While we were traveling from our country, we of course came with respect because it is a territory that is different from the one where we live, but nevertheless we are right now on the same Mother Earth, and this is a knowledge that derives from our Yahe or Ayaskra, and our grandparents foresaw what is happening these days with the territory, this dispute, not by power or money, but rather for water. In school, you are taught in biology that these are natural resources. For us, Mother Earth is not a resource, is a living resource that works 24/7. My mother, Macharito, always said that while we are resting, while we are sleeping, Mother Earth produces seeds for the food that we put on the table. Breathing is inconstant. Water is necessary. This is something that the academy does not teach us. The academia does not teach us. They say that we can use everything because it never ends. We were not told that water could end, that mountains could end. And we are at a point where we see unbalances, and scientific knowledge that has been developed via research is the evolution of the knowledge of ancestors. This has to do with the universality of the territory. How can we do that via these spiritual spaces that provide guidelines and that allow us to recognize that we were born from the womb of a woman, and back in the Amazon, those women that live in isolation are not familiar with the effects of climate change. We're thinking of climate change because there is a problem, and we are aware of this problem. So this exercise, this spiritual work that results from ancestral knowledge, we offer solutions that will help you and will help us to take care of the water, to defend life and to defend spirituality and to guarantee life to future generations. Thank you very much, Paola. Thank you very much. You mentioned the womb and your mother. What is the role of young girl and young women such as you? What is the role of the private sector supporting this struggle that you've just mentioned? Well, that's a very big question, a very good question, and it helps us to think about my story, of womb, to have a memory of my mom, my grandmother, my great-great-mother, and this allows me to understand that this is not something that happened by chance, and life knows why we are here in this space, and this allowed me to grow in a very interesting process, association of women, indigenous women that are part of this integral space of life creation. Mama Conchiting, my grandmother, was co-founder. I'm now the third generation in this process. Due to the same needs, organizational needs, I had to study, and I was trained as a business administrator, and right now I'm studying or following what is called a pedagogy of Mother Earth. So my basis to get to know my origin, my law of origin, my history, my principles, where do I come from, but also to put myself in the modern context, civilized context, colonized context, and actually coming here and share with you our dynamics, how we can present solutions. We are all familiar with the problem, of course, but how do we get together, all of us, and find a solution? We speak about coherence. I mean, it's so difficult. We are concerned, but we continue to consume. So our grandparents speak, from saying to doing, and this is the challenge. Thank you very much to the Amazon conservation team. They joined us in the doing, in the preserving of our territory. So this is our role, and what we believe as young people, to train ourselves to be able to do something in the territories at the grassroots, so that we can be a bridge in the dialogue. We speak of the collective work, La Minga. This is the collective work where everybody participates. How do we turn this in a Minga and establish limits? You respect our knowledge that has been passed by generations, and we understand and we help to actually address the issues that have been raised in this space. This is very important for me. I am the youngest in this, the youngest chair of this association. We are fighting against mining projects that will have a negative impact on biodiversity. Today, my women had to drink contaminated water from Pontomagon River to be able to feed their children. So the womb of Mother Earth is sick. Our wombs are also sick. And we speak of women. Women give life to communities. They give life to society. And these are women that sat in the ceremonial space with tears that such as those that I have now in my heart. We say that this is something, this action is something that I do not do for myself. To defend the water, the hills, the territory is not for us. This will be for the future generations, for those that do not have a voice. But I need to say, I have to say that thanks to my grandparents that resisted, that defended these values, I still have my mother tongue, and I have Sagra as well. So we need to see what we leave to future generations. This is my message. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paula, or Pai in Kamcha. Dario, in order to conclude the panel. Dario's community is a neighbor to the ones we saw before on screen. For your people, what does it mean to share the land with another people in isolation? What responsibility, what lessons for the world that these people exist and live there? Well, we are in mid-21st century. Time keeps going on. I remember the history of colonization, the history of the Americas. In Colombia, talking about our country, in the Colombian Amazon, at this point in time, we have what you saw on the video, indigenous peoples who have absolutely no contact with anyone, not even with us, their neighbors. We are neighbors within this territory. If you look at the Amazon, we're talking about 27 million hectares of primary forest, virgin land. Us, the ones of us who contact with society and Colombian society and with the government, we host debates. They cannot do it, and the history and their story is also a striking one, as they do not have a voice and know that we are here on this side. We have said that those around them, their neighbors, are the ones who have to protect and defend the land, the forest, so that by protecting the forest, we will protect them without going there, without flying over them, without going to see them. We in Colombia say that we should protect the indigenous peoples in their natural state. In natural state because they live in the exact same way as they lived centuries ago. We do not want to happen to them what happened to us. But there is a challenge with everything going on in Colombia. Trafficking, wood industry, and so many other things. We in Colombia have also worked on different contingency plans in case things need to be taken in another direction. and we are, through our shamans and our spiritual leaders, doing what we can to be able to defend them. We are the shields. We are their shields, and we have to know how to better protect them. Thank you very much, Dario. And with this, we conclude our last panel. A round of applause for our guests who came from afar.
Now to close our day. Gracias, Darío, Pai, Paola. Now, to close our final presentation of the day, it's also my pleasure. I introduced my dear friend and teacher. Now I'm going to introduce my boss. He's also my friend and teacher. Dr. Mark Plotkin was educated at Harvard, Yale, and Tufts University. He has delivered TED Talks and was a Skoll Award winner in 2008 for his contributions to conservation. Together with his wife, he's the co-founder of the Amazon Conservation Team, which has partnered with over 100 South American groups to map and improve the protection of over 100 million acres of ancestral territory in the Amazon. Mark has spent I had here 30 years and he corrected 40. He has spent over 40 years studying traditional plant use with shamans across Central and South America. He's the author of the international bestseller Tales of a Shaman's Apprentice and The Amazon, What Everybody Needs to Know. He also starred in the IMAX film The Amazon, which was nominated for an Academy Award, and currently hosts the podcasts Plants of the Gods, which has over 6 million downloads, and explores the healing, cultural, and spiritual dimensions of the world's most powerful plants. So this is enough of me. Now I will leave the floor with Mark, and he'll close with his great lecture. So thanks, Mark, for coming, and thank you all for having us.
Danielle. Muy buenas tardes. Estamos muy felices de estar con ustedes. Gracias por la invitación. Y aos brasileiros e los portugueses, muito obrigado pela invitação. Estamos muito felizes de estar aqui. Mas agora vou falar na minha língua tribal, inglês. Now, Dr. Thomas Lovejoy called the Amazon the greatest expression of life on earth. But to the shaman and to the ethnobotanist, it is the ultimate source of wisdom and healing. This is a picture taken on my first day in the Northeast Amazon in 1942. My guide, Koita, took me into the forest, and the second plant he showed me was what you see here, a plant he called itui, which they used to treat sleeplessness, insomnia. And I made a note, put it in my plant press, and wandered on. Imagine my surprise 40 years later when I opened my computer and saw that Brazilian scientists studying this plant in the lab found that this plant is full of CBD, no THC. CBD in my country is a $7 billion a year business. Now this shows two things. I'm a terrible businessman, and more importantly, these people know things that we do not. The Amazon is a land of diversity and stupendousness. It is home to the world's largest serpent, the anaconda, that stretches over 40 feet. The largest eagle, the harpy eagle, 7-foot wingspan. The giant anteater, the capybara, which weighs in over 200 pounds. The Goliath spider, over a foot in length. The black caiman, these man-eaters weigh in over a half a ton. And I want to emphasize how much we're still finding. We've talked a lot about foodstuffs from the Amazon, but most of it's still out there. This is Carolyn Chabu, an entomologist from Trinidad. On average, she says, we're finding a new species in the Amazon every 3 days. Imagine how much is still out there. Now, much of it is little teeny tiny beetles, but not all of it. This is a blue tarantula, found in Guyana in the northeast Amazon about 3 years ago. Now here's what's important about finding a big blue tarantula. The great future of new medicines from nature is going to be in poisons and toxins. Remember 500 years ago, Paracelsus said, the difference between a plant and a medicine is just a question of dosage. So many of these poisons, from snakes or from insects or other creatures, have great potential for therapeutic uses in the future. Here's another great example from the Amazon. How many Italians do we have in the audience? Not just Stefano. Well, the important point here is that in 1800, Volta, working in northern Italy, invented the first battery based in part on the organs of the electric eel. The electric eel was described scientifically by Linnaeus, the father of scientific classification. This is in 1766, I think. So this is an animal that's been known to Western science for hundreds and hundreds of years. But here's the news. Just a couple of years ago, Brazilian scientists found 2 new species of electric eel, one over 8 feet long, and these are being studied because they're 20% more effective than the original species. These are being studied to create new batteries for implanting in the human body, for pacemakers, for example, longer-lasting pacemakers. So it ain't just foods in the rainforest, and it ain't just medicines, it's stuff that can benefit us. And I want to make crystal clear here. I'm not all about utilitarian uses of nature. I don't think we should protect nature because it might be good to eat or cure cancer, although both, I believe, are true. I believe we should protect nature as a spiritual and ethical exercise, first and foremost. This is the largest tree in the Amazon, except it isn't. This is the great kapok tree, which is long believed to be the tallest tree in the neotropical rainforest, that is Central and South America. Well, 4 years ago, Brazilian scientists found a species of legume, Dinizia is the genus, which was 88 feet taller than any tree known in the Amazon. Now imagine that. We live in a world where records are broken by a millimeter or an ounce, and to find something almost 100 feet taller than what is known, it just shows you how much is out there waiting to be discovered if we protect it. This is a Brazilian pit viper. It's a source of ACE inhibitors. This is a billion-dollar class of drugs developed based on study of this Brazilian snake venom. The good news is it's worth lots of money and it helps lots of people. The bad news is not a nickel flowed back to Brazil. This is no longer an effective way of doing business, and we obviously need much more ethical approaches, not just in the food industry, but in the medicinal industry and anything that involves developing new drugs from nature. Can I get a glass? Oh, there is one here. I got it. Never mind. This is a Brazilian scorpion, an Amazonian scorpion. It's now being studied in the lab because cells were found to kill breast cancer cells. Remember what I said about toxins being the medicines of the future. And believe me, after 40 years in the Amazon, I can assure you, there's a lot of things that bite and sting. But the people who know the most knowledge about these plants, these animals, these fungi, are the shamans themselves, the pages, the curanderos. These people know a lot more about the Amazon than any Western scientist does or ever will. And this, of course, is the famous ayahuasca. Now, ayahuasca was a very local, restricted vine in the northwest Amazon. It actually comes from Colombia. It actually comes from the Sibundoy Valley of Colombia, where Paula is from. So ayahuasca is drunk every day now, from Israel to Istanbul to India, but originates in one valley in the Colombian Amazon. And I once took a Colombian shaman to Los Angeles to try and raise money from a foundation to protect the shamanic tradition. And the foundation person, who spoke quite good Spanish, turned to the shaman and said, "Did you go to medical school?" And the shaman said, "Of course not." And this idiot said to the indigenous fellow, "Well, then what can you know about healing?" I still can't believe he said that. And the Indian smiled, and he looked at him and he said, "You know, many human afflictions are diseases of the heart, the mind, and the soul." He said, "Western medicine can't touch those. With the vine, I cure them." So as an ethnobotanist, a scientist who studies medicinal plant use by indigenous peoples, I was taught that this is a participatory science. So when I got to the Yanomami a couple of decades ago and they offered me the snuff pipe, I knew exactly what to do with it. Now, it's this type of research amongst indigenous peoples which has launched what's called the psychedelic revolution. We are now using some of these shamanic medicines to treat incurable diseases, PTSD, addiction, Alzheimer's, depression. All of these things have the possibility of not just being treated, but being cured by listening to the indigenous healers and their plants and their fungi, and in at least one case, their animals. This is the magic frog from Peru, first encountered by my late friend Lauren McIntyre amongst the Matzes people in Peru. He tried this, found it was highly hallucinogenic, and didn't think anybody'd believe him, so he never published the findings. It wasn't until later other people followed up on this. But compounds from this hallucinogenic frog, which are proteins and not alkaloids like most hallucinogens, are being studied as a way to get medicine past the blood-brain barrier, which is one of the holy grails of Western medicine. I want to switch topics here and talk a bit about foods from the rainforest. You know, we all know that things like cassava come from the Amazon, but most of us don't know how many things actually do come from the Amazon, like peanuts. And when we talk about food plants from the Americas, not much came north of tropical America. If we had to consume only native plants, us gringos would be living off of pecan sunflower seeds and cranberries. My friend ethnobotanist Gary Nabhan points out that 3/5 of all major foodstuffs in the world, let me say that again, 3/5 of all major foodstuffs in the world come from crops that were first cultivated by indigenous geniuses in Central and South America. Plants like avocados, chili peppers, cassava. And let me make a very important point here. Even though we've pulled cassava out of the rainforest, doesn't mean that we can just write off the rainforest. Cassava is native to the Amazon. It's consumed by 200 million people in Central and South America every day. But consider this, 500 million, that is over 2 times that amount, in West Africa consume cassava. So those of us concerned about well-being in Africa, tropical Africa, need to be concerned about the fate of the Amazon as well. It's even a staple in tropical Asia where they make boba tea. The boba balls are made from Amazonian cassava. And also, just a partial list of agricultural products that come originally from the American tropics: amaranth, avocado, cacao, chocolate, chile, common beans, corn, manioc, peanut, pineapple, potato, pumpkin, sweet potato, tomato, yam, and I could go on and on. Vanilla is native to the American tropics. But here's a point I really want to leave you with. It's the second most important point I'm going to make today, and that is the value of agrobiodiversity. It's not just what's in the wild in the Amazon that's important. The Amhuesha people in the Peruvian Amazon have 200 varieties of cassava. Let me say that again. A small tribal group has 200 varieties of cassava. And in an age of changing climate, in an age of climate stress, we need to be concerned about the protection of those varieties and the cultures that nurture them. So the Kwikuru in Brazil, in the Xingu where we work, have 50 varieties. The Jivaro, the so-called headhunters from Peru and Ecuador, have 100 varieties. The Tucanos have 135 varieties. That's on the Colombia-Brazil border. And the Amhuesha, as I said, from Peru have 200 varieties. And another thing that plays into the importance of these indigenous cultures for global agriculture is biodegradable pesticides. One of the most important biodegradable pesticides is rotenone, which comes from Lanchocarpus, which indigenous peoples throw in the river to stun the fish, and they come to the surface and are picked off when they do so. So there are other biodegradable pesticides out there in nature, in the rainforests of the Amazon, of Africa, or Asia, or maybe even the temperate forests as well. And when we talk about regenerative agriculture, one of the cornerstones of regenerative agriculture, if we get it right, are new crops from nature. This is the Burra tea palm, which thrives, this is the most common palm in the Amazon, which thrives in swampy areas of little use to traditional agriculture. And the fruit has more vitamin A than spinach and more vitamin C than citrus. This is the lulo. Tastes like a cross between banana and oranges, native to Colombia. The cocona, closely related, also from the same family, Solanaceae, another fantastic fruit, much unknown to the outside world. In fact, my colleague Nigel Smith found 100 new edible species in one corner of the Amazon. That's how much is out there. This is the Sacha inchi, sometimes called the Inca peanut. This has one of the highest levels of omega-3 fatty acids in the entire plant kingdom. Cupuaçu, now much more widely known than it was just a decade ago, close relative of chocolate, growing in popularity throughout the industrialized world, native to the Amazon. And one of the things the Amazon Conservation Team is involved in is putting together an atlas of Amazonian foods. Because if you want to protect nature, you need to write down what's out there and what needs to be protected. So there's obviously a collaboration, not just with South American scientists, but with our indigenous colleagues as well. And this is the single most important picture I'm going to show you. Forget everything else I said if you remember this. This is a picture I took flying over the Xingu Reserve in southeastern Brazilian Amazon. At the line running through the middle is the eastern border of the reserve. So everything on the top, which is pristine rainforest, is inhabited by 14 tribes. 14 groups of indigenous people live there, pristine rainforest. South of the line is soy agriculture. All right? Not a single goddamn tree. Just a couple of, these aren't trees on the left here. Those are some skinny-ass cows. Okay? So the idea that if we just stop eating beef, which I have done, and eat soy, everything will be great. Because as long as we're cutting down the rainforest and potential biodegradable pesticides and potential cures for cancer to provide cheap soy to the gringos and the chinos, we're going to lose the battle. One of the ways we found most effective of marrying ancient shamanic wisdom and 21st century technology is ethnographic mapping, teaching the indigenous peoples how to map their own land. Let me say that again. It's the perfect marriage of ancient shamanic wisdom and 21st century technology, because you can't do it well just using either of those knowledge systems. And so where we started with one indigenous group in Suriname, and they taught their neighbors, and they taught their neighbors, and they taught their neighbors, we've now done this with over 100 indigenous groups throughout tropical South America. So what they have done with these maps is seize control of their cultural and environmental destinies. Some of these maps have over 1,000 items on them, items that only existed in the heads of the elders until we launched this project for them to record their own knowledge in their own language for their own purposes. But a map becomes a management plan when you put it into action. That involves training indigenous park guards to monitor and patrol their borders, whether you're trying to keep out people during a pandemic or you're trying to keep narco-traffickers, like my colleague said. This is fundamental to protecting your own land, your own rainforest, your own rivers, your own culture. And guard posts at the mouth of the rivers to keep unwanted outsiders out. This is to protect the rainforest, this is to protect the contacted cultures, this is to protect the uncontacted cultures. So when I look in the faces of these isolated peoples that you heard about from Danielle, I don't see the faces of a remote culture. I see our own faces reflected in that, because I believe that conservation is not a sacrifice. It is a benefit. It is a necessity. So whether you want to fight climate change, improve water quality, protect human rights, find new cures for incurable diseases, we need to create a world where there's space for these cultures and space for these forests, first and foremost for their benefit and ultimately for our own. Thank you again.